The viewing room at Nexus Prime Military Academy was dark except for the large screen showing death and failure. Hyunwoo Kim sat in the back row watching the recordings of past attempts at the Predator test. On screen, a massive Brutak warrior, with thick armor plates covering his body, ran through the jungle of Karath Prime. The warrior carried weapons that could cut through metal and wore shields that could stop energy blasts. Behind him in the shadows moved something darker than the night itself. The Shadow Claw struck without warning. One moment the Brutak was running, the next moment red blood covered the camera lens. The recording ended with the flat tone that meant another cadet was dead. Hyunwoo had watched 17 such recordings today. Every single one ended the same way. Commander Tae-jin Park walked to the front of the room and turned on the lights. The other cadets looked tired and scared. They had all seen what happened to the strongest warriors in the galaxy when they faced the apex predator of Karath Prime. That was the last successful graduate from the Mindari species, Park said in his calm voice. He lasted 43 hours before the Shadow Claw found him. The average survival time for all species is 18 hours. No one has ever completed the full 72-hour test. A cadet near the front raised his hand. It was Dong Hyun Choi from the Mindari homeworld. His people could read minds and project thoughts directly into other beings. Sir, why do we still do this test if no one can pass it? Park looked at the young Mindari for a long moment. Because the galaxy needs warriors who can face the impossible and find a way to survive. The Predator test does not care about your technology or your special abilities. It only cares if you can stay alive when death is hunting you. Hyunwoo raised his hand slowly. The other cadets turned to look at the human. Most of them had never seen one of his species before humans joined the Galactic Council 5 years ago. Earth was considered a dangerous world by galactic standards, but not as dangerous as the death worlds like Karath Prime. Yes, Cadet Kim, Park said. Sir, what exactly makes the Shadow Claw so deadly? Hyunwoo asked. Park touched a control and the screen showed a still image of the creature. It looked like death given form. 12 feet tall with arms that ended, in claws longer than sword blades. Its skin could change color to match any background. Its eyes glowed with intelligence that most aliens would recognize as equal to their own. The Shadow Claw is the perfect predator, Park explained. It can become invisible in any environment. Its claws can cut through most armor. It is faster than a speeder and stronger than a Brutak. Most importantly, it learns from every encounter. Every trap you set, every weapon you use, every hiding spot you choose, it remembers and adapts. Another cadet spoke up. This one was from the energy-wielding Scion species. Sir, has anyone ever hurt one of these creatures? Yes, Park said. 3 times in the past 50 years, cadets have managed to wound a Shadow Claw. Each time, the creature became more careful and more dangerous in the next test. It learns not just from its own experiences, but from the experiences of its entire species. Admiral Bo-Ra Lee entered the room. She was human, but had been at Nexus Prime for 20 years. Her gray hair and serious expression commanded respect from every species in the Academy. I see you are showing them the failure recordings again, Commander. Yes, Admiral. I want them to understand what they face. Admiral Lee walked to the front of the room. In 2 days, we will select 1 cadet to attempt the Predator test. This is not a request or an assignment. This is a volunteer mission. Whoever goes to Karath Prime may not return. The room became very quiet. Hyunwoo looked around at his fellow cadets. The Brutak cadet was flexing his massive muscles nervously. The Scion was making small energy balls appear and disappear in her hands. The Mindari was probably reading everyone's thoughts to see who might volunteer. What equipment are we allowed to take? Asked the Brutak. Standard survival gear, Admiral, Lee replied. 1 weapon of your choice, basic environmental suit, emergency medical kit, and food for 3 days. The test is about survival, not about bringing enough firepower to destroy the creature. Dong Hyun looked directly at Hyun Woo. Admiral, is it true that humans come from a death world like Karath Prime? Admiral Lee smiled slightly. Earth is classified as a Class 7 dangerous world. Karath Prime is classified as Class 12. The difference is significant. What makes Karath Prime more dangerous than Earth? Hyun Woo asked. Everything, Admiral Lee said simply. The air itself is toxic to most species. The plants are carnivorous. The weather can change from freezing to boiling in minutes. And at the top of the food chain is the Shadow Claw, a creature that has evolved to hunt and kill anything that moves. The Brutak cadet stood up. His species was known for being direct. Admiral, why has no one passed this test in 300 years? Are we all weak? Admiral Lee considered the question carefully. The test reveals something important about how we think. Every species that attempts it uses the same basic strategy. They try to hide from the Shadow Claw until the time runs out. They use their best technology and their natural abilities to avoid detection. What is wrong with that strategy? Asked the Scion. Nothing is wrong with it, Admiral Lee said. It is logical and reasonable. It is what any intelligent being would do when faced with a superior predator. The problem is that the Shadow Claw expects this behavior. It has evolved to hunt creatures that hide. Hyun Woo leaned forward in his seat. Admiral, what if someone tried a different approach? What do you mean, Cadet Kim? What if someone did not try to hide from the Shadow Claw? The room erupted in nervous laughter. Dong Hyun shook his head. That would be suicide. The recordings show what happens when the creature finds you. Admiral Lee held up her hand for silence. Cadet Kim, what alternative would you suggest? Hyun Woo stood up slowly. He had been thinking about this question since he first heard about the predator test. On Earth, we have many dangerous predators. Tigers, bears, crocodiles. The humans who survive encounters with these creatures do not always run and hide. What do? Admiral Lee asked with genuine interest. Sometimes they study the predator. They learn its habits, its territory, its weaknesses. Sometimes the best way to survive a predator is to understand it better than it understands you. The room was completely silent now. Even Commander Park looked surprised by the human's words. Admiral Lee nodded slowly. An interesting perspective, Cadet Kim. Are you volunteering for the test? Hyun Woo felt every eye in the room watching him. He thought about his family back on Earth, about the jungles where he had trained as a soldier, about the predators he had faced and survived. Yes, Admiral, I volunteer. The equipment selection room buzzed with activity as cadets from across the galaxy chose their survival gear. Massive Brutak warriors selected energy cannons and plasma shields. Scion cadets picked devices that could amplify their natural energy manipulation abilities. The Mindari chose telepathic enhancers and mental projection equipment. Everyone seemed to be preparing for war. Hyun Woo Kim stood at a simple table looking at basic survival tools. He picked up a length of strong rope, tested its weight, and nodded. Next, he selected a basic survival knife with a sharp blade and sturdy handle. The other cadets watched him with growing confusion as he added a small container of mud to his pile of equipment. Dong Hyun Choi approached with his arms full of advanced Mindari technology. His telepathic headband glowed with blue energy, and his thought projection device hummed quietly. Human, are you sure you know what you are doing? This is not a camping trip on your primitive world. Hyun Woo continued examining simple tools. I know exactly what I'm doing. You are going to face the most dangerous predator in the known galaxy with rope and mud? Dong Hyun laughed loudly. Several other cadets joined in the laughter. A Brutak cadet named Han Sol approached. His people were allies with humans, but even he looked concerned. Friend Hyun Woo, perhaps you should consider more powerful weapons. The Shadow Claw has killed warriors much stronger than any human. Hyun Woo picked up a small water purification tablet. Han Sol, on Earth we have a saying, the right tool for the job is not always the biggest tool. Commander Tai Jin Park entered the equipment room and surveyed the preparations. He stopped when he saw Hyun-woo's selection. Cadet Kim, I need to speak with you privately. They walked to an empty corner of the room. Park spoke in a low voice. Hyun-woo, I know you volunteered for this test, but I am concerned. You are choosing equipment like you are going on a nature walk, not facing a creature that has killed hundreds of trained warriors. Hyun-woo met his commander's eyes. Sir, with respect, all those trained warriors used advanced weapons and technology. All of them are dead. Maybe the problem is not that they were not strong enough. Maybe the problem is that they all tried the same approach. Park shook his head. This is not Earth, Cadet. Kareth Prime is a death world where even the air can kill you. The plants are carnivorous. The weather changes from extreme cold to extreme heat without warning. And somewhere in that hell is a creature that has evolved specifically to hunt and kill anything that enters its territory. Sir, predators are predators, Hyun-woo said calmly. Whether they live on Earth or Kareth Prime, they follow patterns. They have territories, hunting methods, feeding habits. If I can learn those patterns, I can stay alive. And if you are wrong? Hyun-woo was quiet for a moment. Then I will die. But at least I will die trying something different instead of repeating the same failure that has killed everyone else. Park sighed deeply. What else do you need for your equipment? Hyun-woo walked to another table and selected a small container. Permission to gather additional materials from the jungle itself. What kind of materials? Plants for camouflage and scent masking, mud and clay for concealment, anything I can use to blend in with the environment. Park looked confused. Cadet, the Shadow Claw can see through any camouflage. Its vision extends into spectrums that most species cannot even detect. I am not planning to use camouflage to hide from the Shadow Claw, sir. Then what? Hyun-woo smiled slightly. I am going to use it to become part of the environment while I study the creature. Admiral Bo-Ra Lee approached them. Is there a problem? Here, Admiral, Cadet Kim is requesting permission to gather materials from Kareth Prime during the test, Park explained. Admiral Lee looked at Hyun-woo's simple equipment selection. Cadet, are you planning to build something during the test? No, Admiral. I am planning to learn something. Learn what? How the Shadow Claw thinks, how it hunts, how it moves through its territory. Every predator has patterns and habits. If I can understand those patterns, I can predict where it will be and where it will not be. Admiral Lee was quiet for a long moment. Around them, other cadets continued selecting advanced weapons and defensive equipment. Cadet Kim, in 300 years of testing, every species has tried to avoid the Shadow Claw until the time limit expired. You are suggesting the opposite approach. Yes, Admiral. You want to actively study the creature while it is hunting you? Yes, Admiral. Admiral Lee turned to Commander Park. What is your assessment of this strategy? Park hesitated. Admiral, it is either brilliant or completely insane. I cannot decide which. Dong-hyun had been listening to the conversation with his telepathic abilities. He approached the group with several other cadets following behind him. Admiral, I formally request that you do not allow the human to attempt this test. His strategy will result in his death within the first few hours. It will be a waste of resources and an embarrassment to the Academy. The other cadets murmured agreement. The Scion cadet spoke up. Dong-hyun is right. The human is clearly not prepared for this challenge. Perhaps we should select someone with more advanced capabilities. Admiral Lee looked around at the assembled cadets. Does anyone else volunteer to take Cadet Kim's place? The room became very quiet. Despite their criticism of Hyun-woo's approach, none of them wanted to face the Shadow Claw themselves. I see, Admiral Lee said. Cadet Kim, you have permission. to gather materials from the environment during your test. However, I want you to understand the risks. Kareth Prime is not just dangerous because of the Shadow Claw. The entire ecosystem is designed to kill anything that does not belong there. I understand, Admiral. The weather alone has killed 12 cadets over the years. The plants have killed 8 more. The smaller predators have killed 6. The Shadow Claw accounts for most deaths. But it is not the only danger you will face. Hyun-woo nodded seriously. Admiral, may I ask you something? Go ahead. In all the recordings I have watched, every cadet who died was trying to survive until the time limit expired. Has anyone ever tried to complete a different objective? Admiral, Lee looked puzzled. What do you mean? The test is called the Predator Test. Everyone assumes the objective is to hide from the predator. But what if the real test is something else? What if the objective is to understand the predator? The room fell silent. Commander Park stared at Hyun-woo with a mixture of surprise and concern. Even Dong-hyun stopped projecting his telepathic smugness. Admiral Lee spoke slowly. Cadet Kim, the official objective of the test is to survive on Kareth Prime for 72 hours while being hunted by the Shadow Claw. There is no other stated objective. Yes, Admiral. But sometimes the stated objective is not the real objective. Sometimes the real test is hidden inside the obvious test. Admiral Lee exchanged glances with Commander Park. Cadet, you will depart for Kareth Prime in 18 hours. Use that time to prepare yourself mentally for what you will face. The Shadow Claw has killed some of the bravest and most capable warriors in galactic history. I will be ready, Admiral, as the group dispersed. Dong-hyun approached Hyun-woo one final time. Human, I want you to know that I will remember you fondly after you are dead. Hyun-woo smiled calmly. Dong-hyun, I want you to remember something else. Sometimes the smallest tool in the kit is the one that solves the problem. The transport ship dropped Hyun-woo Kim onto the surface of Kareth Prime at dawn. The jungle around him was alive with sounds that no human had ever heard before. Plants with teeth snapped at insects that glowed with poisonous light. Trees moved, without wind, their branches reaching toward anything that passed underneath. The air itself seemed thick with danger. Back at Nexus Prime Academy, Admiral Bo-Ra Lee and Commander Tae-jin Park watched multiple screens showing vital signs and locations of different test participants. 3 other cadets had been dropped in separate sectors of the Death World. The Brutak warrior Han Sol was in the eastern jungle. The Scion female Yu Jin was in the western mountains. The Mindari Dong-hyun was in the northern swamps. All cadets are showing normal vital signs after landing, reported the monitoring officer. Beginning standard survival protocols. On the screens, each cadet began implementing their species' traditional approach to the predator test. Han Sol immediately started digging a fortified bunker using his natural strength and engineering tools. Yu-jin found a cave in the mountains and began setting up energy barriers at the entrance. Dong-hyun used his telepathic abilities to scan the area for the Shadow Claw's mental presence while hiding in thick swamp vegetation. Admiral Lee focused on Hyun-woo's screen. The human was doing something completely different. Instead of seeking shelter or defensive positions, he was walking openly through the jungle. He stopped frequently to examine plants, animal tracks, and territorial markings. On trees, what is he doing? Commander Park asked with concern. He is gathering information, Admiral Lee replied. Look at his movements. He is not wandering randomly. He is following some kind of pattern. On Kareth Prime, Hyun-woo knelt beside a stream to examine strange scratches in the mud. The marks were deep and parallel, clearly made by something with very large claws. He measured the distance between the scratches with his fingers and estimated the size of whatever had made them. Based on the depth and spacing, it was much larger than any Earth predator he had encountered. He followed the stream for several hundred meters, noting more claw marks at regular intervals. The pattern was consistent. Whatever had made these marks was using the water source as a highway through its territory. Hyunwoo pulled out his rope and tied knots at measured distances, creating a simple but effective tool for estimating distances and sizes of tracks. By midday, the first death alarm sounded at the monitoring station. Han Sol's vital signs had gone flat. The cameras showed his destroyed bunker and blood on the walls, but no sign of what had killed him. 12 hours, Admiral, Lee noted quietly. Better than average, but still a failure. Commander Park checked the other screens. Yujin is still alive in her cave, but something is testing her energy barriers. They are weakening. And the Mindari? Dong-hyun reports that he cannot detect the Shadow Claw's mental signature. Either it is too far away or it has some kind of telepathic shielding. Admiral Lee turned her attention back to Hyunwoo's screen. The human had found what appeared to be a feeding site. Bones from various jungle creatures were scattered in a rough circle around a flat rock. Some of the bones showed the same parallel claw marks he had seen by the stream. Hyunwoo carefully examined the feeding site without disturbing anything. He noted which bones were fresh and which were old. He observed how they were arranged and what that might tell him about the creature's eating habits. Most importantly, he looked for patterns in how the site was used. The bones formed 3 distinct piles. Fresh kills were placed on the flat rock in the center. Partially eaten carcasses were moved to the left pile. Cleaned bones were pushed to the right pile. It was an organized system that showed intelligence and routine. Hyunwoo backed away from the feeding site and began looking for observation positions. He found a cluster of thick trees about 50 meters away that provided good sight lines while offering multiple escape routes. Using his rope and natural handholds, he climbed into the canopy and settled in to wait. The second death alarm sounded at hour 18. Yujin's energy barriers had failed and her life signs were gone. 2 down, Commander Park said grimly. Dong-hyun is still hiding in the swamps, but he is showing signs of extreme stress. His telepathic abilities are being overwhelmed by the alien environment. Admiral Lee continued watching Hyunwoo's feed. The human had been motionless in the trees for 6 hours, observing the feeding site. His vital signs are completely calm. He is not showing any of the panic responses we typically see at this stage of the test. As night fell on Kareth Prime, Hyunwoo finally saw what he had been waiting for. The Shadow Claw emerged from the jungle like darkness given form. It was even larger than the recordings had suggested, moving with liquid grace despite its massive size. Its skin shifted colors constantly, making it difficult to track even when Hyunwoo knew exactly where to look. The creature approached its feeding site cautiously. It spent several minutes examining the area, clearly checking for any signs that something had been disturbed. Satisfied that everything was as it had left it, the Shadow Claw placed a fresh kill on the central rock and began to feed. Hyunwoo watched in fascination as the predator ate. It was methodical and precise, using its claws like surgical instruments to separate meat from bone. When it finished eating, it carefully arranged the remains according to the same system Hyunwoo had observed earlier. Fresh bones to the left, cleaned bones to the right. The creature spent nearly an hour at the feeding site. During that time, Hyunwoo learned more about the Shadow Claw than any previous test participant. He observed its grooming habits, its territory marking, behavior, and most importantly, its patrol patterns. When the Shadow Claw finally left, it did not disappear into random jungle. It followed a specific route that took it in a wide circle around the feeding site. Hyunwoo carefully noted the direction and estimated the timing. At hour 24, the third death alarm sounded. Dong-hyun had finally been found by the Shadow Claw. His telepathic abilities had been useless against a creature whose mind worked in completely alien ways. 3 down, Commander Park reported. Only the human remains. Admiral Lee leaned forward in her chair. Look at this. He is moving. On screen, Hyun-woo was climbing down from his observation post, but instead of running away from where he had seen the shadow claw, he was following its path. Using techniques he had learned in Earth's jungles, he tracked the creature by reading signs invisible to most beings. Broken twigs marked the creature's passage through dense vegetation. Displaced stones showed where it had stepped while crossing streams. Disturbed scent markings on trees indicated territorial boundaries. For the next 12 hours, Hyun-woo followed the Shadow Claw's patrol route without ever getting close enough to be detected. He learned that the creature followed a precise schedule, visiting specific locations at predictable times. It had multiple feeding sites, several resting areas, and what appeared to be territorial boundaries that it marked regularly. Most importantly, Hyun-woo discovered something that changed everything. While following a game trail near one of the creature's resting areas, he found smaller tracks alongside the larger ones. The Shadow Claw was not alone on Kareth Prime. "Admiral," the monitoring officer called out, "the human's behavior is unlike anything we have seen in previous tests. He appears to be stalking the Shadow Claw instead of hiding from it." Admiral Lee nodded slowly. "He is treating this like a research mission instead of a survival test. The question is whether his approach will keep him alive long enough to complete." 72 hours. Commander Park checked the timer. 36 hours remaining. He has already survived longer than most participants, and he shows no signs of the psychological breakdown that typically occurs around this time. On Kareth Prime, Hyun-woo had made camp in a natural shelter formed by fallen trees. He used mud and local plant materials to mask his scent, not to hide from the Shadow Claw, but to avoid alerting it to his presence while he continued his observations. He ate small amounts of his emergency rations and purified water from natural sources, conserving his supplies for the remaining time. As he settled in for a few hours of rest, Hyun-woo reviewed what he had learned. The Shadow Claw was not just a mindless killing machine. It was intelligent, organized, and followed predictable patterns. More importantly, it was protecting something that was important enough to maintain strict territorial boundaries. Tomorrow, he would find out what that something was. Dawn of the second day brought new understanding and new danger. Hyun-woo Kim had spent the night analyzing the Shadow Claw's behavioral patterns, and he was beginning to see the bigger picture. The creature was not just hunting randomly through its territory. It was protecting something specific, and that something was located in the most dangerous part of Kareth Prime's jungle. Following the smaller tracks he had discovered, Hyun-woo moved deeper into the Shadow Claw's core territory. The jungle here was different from the outer regions. The plants were larger and more aggressive. Carnivorous flowers tracked his movement with petals that snapped shut when he passed too close. Vines reached down from the canopy, testing his scent and retreating only when they determined he was not suitable prey. At the monitoring station, Admiral Bo-ra Lee watched with growing concern. His vital signs are showing increased stress. The environmental readings in that sector are off the charts for toxicity and danger. Commander Tae-jin Park studied the data feeds. The air quality alone should have killed him by now. How is he surviving in there? Look at his equipment readings. Admiral Lee pointed to another screen. He is using local plant materials to create breathing filters. He is adapting to the environment instead of fighting against it. On Kareth Prime, Hyun-woo had indeed learned to work with the hostile ecosystem. He used leaves from certain trees to neutralize airborne toxins. He identified which water sources were safe and which would kill him within minutes. Most importantly, he learned to recognize the signs that marked the Shadow Claw's most private territory. The smaller tracks led to a natural cave system carved into a rocky hillside. The entrance was partially hidden by hanging vegetation, but Hyun-woo could see claw marks around the opening that were different from the ones he had observed at feeding sites. These marks were protective rather than aggressive, warning rather than threatening. As he approached the cave entrance, Hyun-woo heard sounds that made him freeze in place. From deep within the cave came high-pitched calls that were clearly not made by an adult shadow claw. They were younger voices, smaller and more vulnerable. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The shadow claw was not just protecting territory. It was protecting its young. Everything about the creature's behavior suddenly made sense. The strict patrol schedules, the organized feeding sites, the aggressive response to any intrusion into its domain. The shadow claw was not a mindless killer. It was a parent defending its children. Hyunwoo backed away from the cave entrance and found a concealed position where he could observe without being detected. He needed time to process this information and decide how it changed his survival strategy. At the monitoring station, alarms began sounding. "Admiral, the Shadow Claw's behavior pattern has changed dramatically. It appears to be actively hunting instead of following its normal patrol routine." Admiral Lee leaned forward. "Show me the creature's location relative to Cadet Kim." The tactical display showed two moving dots converging on each other. The Shadow Claw was moving directly toward Hyunwoo's position with speed and purpose that had not been seen in previous tests. "It knows he is there," Commander Park said quietly. "After 48 hours of being observed, it has finally detected his presence." On Kareth Prime, Hyunwoo felt the change in the jungle around him. The ambient sounds of insects and small creatures stopped abruptly. Even the carnivorous plants seemed to sense approaching danger and pulled their appendages close to their main bodies. Something very large and very dangerous was moving through the forest, and it was coming directly toward him. Hyunwoo had two choices. He could run and try to evade the Shadow Claw using traditional survival tactics, or he could stay and face the consequences of his unconventional approach to the test. Running would mean abandoning everything he had learned about the creature and returning to the same failed strategies that had killed hundreds of previous test participants. He chose to stay. When the Shadow Claw emerged from the jungle, it moved, with deadly purpose. Its camouflage skin rippled through colors that made it difficult to focus on, but Hyunwoo had studied the creature long enough to track its movement by reading the displacement of vegetation around it. The predator stopped 20 meters away and became completely still. For several long minutes, human and alien predator studied each other across the space between them. Hyunwoo could see intelligence in the creature's glowing eyes, and he suspected that the Shadow Claw was equally surprised to find a being that had been tracking it instead of fleeing from it. Slowly, carefully, Hyunwoo reached into his equipment pack and pulled out one of his emergency rations. He placed it on the ground between himself and the Shadow Claw, then backed away several steps. The gesture was clear. He was not challenging the creature or threatening its territory. He was acknowledging its dominance and offering tribute. The Shadow Claw moved forward cautiously and sniffed the offered food. After a moment, it consumed the ration in a single bite. The gesture seemed to confuse rather than satisfy the creature. In 300 years of testing, no participant had ever offered food to the apex predator. From the cave behind the Shadow Claw came the high-pitched calls of its young. The adult's head snapped around toward the sound, and Hyunwoo saw something he had not expected. The creature's aggressive posture changed to one of protective concern. At that moment, Hyunwoo understood that the Shadow Claw faced the same dilemma. He did. It wanted to eliminate the potential threat to its offspring, but it also needed to return to the cave to respond to their calls. The predator was torn between its hunting instincts and its parental responsibilities. Then the jungle erupted, in chaos. A pack of smaller predators burst from the undergrowth, moving with coordinated precision toward the cave entrance. They were sleek, fast creatures with razor-sharp teeth and pack-hunting instincts. Hyunwoo recognized them from his earlier observations. They were scavengers that fed on the Shadow Claw's kills, but they had apparently decided to eliminate the competition by attacking the young. The Shadow Claw spun toward the new threat, its attention completely diverted from Hyunwoo. But there were too many attackers approaching from different directions. The adult could not possibly defend the cave entrance against a coordinated assault by an entire pack. Hyunwoo had perhaps 3 seconds to make a decision that would determine whether he lived or died. Every instinct told him to run while the Shadow Claw was distracted. This was his chance to escape and hide until the test period ended. It was the logical, reasonable choice that any sane being would make. Instead, he pulled out his survival knife and charged toward the cave entrance. The pack of scavengers had not expected a human to enter the fight. Their coordination broke down as they tried to process this new variable in their attack plan. Hyunwoo used their confusion to his advantage, placing himself between the largest group of attackers and the cave opening. His knife was small compared to the creature's natural weapons, but he had advantages they did not expect. He was intelligent, unpredictable, and desperate. More importantly, he was fighting to protect something rather than just to kill, and that gave him a focus and determination that the scavengers could not match. The battle lasted only minutes, but it felt like hours. Hyunwoo fought with techniques learned in Earth's jungles, using his smaller size and greater agility to avoid the scavengers' teeth while striking at vulnerable points with his knife. The Shadow Claw engaged the main body of the pack with devastating effectiveness, its massive claws tearing through multiple attackers with each swipe. When the last of the pack was dead or fleeing, Hyunwoo found himself standing at the cave entrance, with his knife still in his hand. Blood from minor wounds covered his arms and face. The Shadow Claw stood nearby, its intelligent eyes fixed on the human who had helped defend its young. At the monitoring station, Admiral Bo-Ra Lee and Commander Park watched in stunned silence as the tactical display showed both the human and the Shadow Claw stationary at the same location with no signs of combat between them. "What just happened?" the monitoring officer asked. Admiral Lee stared at the screens showing vital signs that indicated both beings were alive and relatively calm. "I think," she said slowly, "that Cadet Kim just passed the test in a way that no one has ever imagined possible." The final 24 hours of the Predator test passed like a dream that defied all previous understanding of what was possible on Kareth Prime. Hyunwoo Kim sat near the cave entrance, where the Shadow Claw's young were hidden, sharing his remaining emergency rations with the adult Predator while they both recovered from the battle against the scavenger pack. The Shadow Claw had not killed him. More than that, the massive creature seemed to have accepted his presence as something between neutral and beneficial. When smaller predators approached their position, the Shadow Claw would position itself protectively while allowing Hyunwoo to remain close to the cave entrance. At the monitoring station, Admiral Bo-Ra Lee had called in additional observers from across the Galactic Council. Representatives from dozens of species watched the screens in amazement as they witnessed something that challenged their basic understanding of predator-prey relationships. "The human's vital signs remain stable," reported the monitoring officer. "Both beings appear to be resting in close proximity to each other without any signs of aggression." Commander Tae-Jin Park shook his head in disbelief. "In 300 years of testing, we have never seen the Shadow Claw tolerate the presence of another species for more than a few minutes. Cadet Kim has been in direct contact with the creature for over 18 hours. A Mindari representative leaned forward. "Is it possible that the human has used some form of mental control over the predator?" "Negative," Admiral Lee replied. "Humans do not possess telepathic abilities, and our monitoring equipment shows no evidence of any form of mental manipulation. What we are observing appears to be a genuine cooperative relationship." On Kareth Prime, Hyunwoo was learning things about the Shadow Claw that no textbook or military manual had ever recorded. The creature was not just intelligent in the way that Earth predators showed cunning and adaptability. It demonstrated problem-solving abilities, emotional responses, and social behaviors that indicated a level of consciousness comparable to most galactic species. When the young Shadow Claws emerged from the cave to investigate their parents' unusual guest, Hyunwoo observed family dynamics that reminded him of large predators on Earth. The adult was patient and protective with its offspring, teaching them through demonstration and gentle correction. The young were curious and playful, investigating Hyun-woo with the fearless enthusiasm of children who knew their parent would keep them safe. The breakthrough moment came when one of the young approached Hyun-woo directly. The small predator, still only half the size of an adult human, sniffed his outstretched hand and made soft sounds that clearly indicated interest rather than aggression. When Hyun-woo remained calm and non-threatening, the young Shadowclaw allowed him to touch its surprisingly soft fur. The adult watched this interaction with what Hyun-woo could only interpret as approval. The message was clear. The human had proven himself trustworthy through his actions, and the family unit was willing to accept him as a temporary member of their social group. As the final hours of the test approached, Hyun-woo faced a decision that would define not just his own future, but potentially change how the galaxy understood the relationship between intelligence and predation. He could simply wait for extraction and report his survival as a successful completion of the test. Or he could attempt something that had never been tried before. He chose the unprecedented option. Using techniques learned from his study of the Shadowclaw's territorial behavior, Hyun-woo began working with the adult predator to expand its hunting efficiency. He showed the creature how human tracking methods could complement its natural abilities. Together, they located and successfully hunted prey species that provided better nutrition for the growing young. The cooperation was remarkable. To observe from the monitoring station, two apex predators from different worlds working together as a team to accomplish goals that neither could achieve alone. The human provided intelligence and planning. The Shadowclaw provided strength and natural weapons. The combination was devastatingly effective. "Admiral," the communications officer announced, "we are receiving extraction requests from Cadet Kim." Admiral Lee looked surprised. "Extraction requests? The test period is not complete for another 6 hours. Sir, the message is unusual. He is not requesting immediate extraction. He is requesting permission to extend his stay on Karath Prime." The observation room fell completely silent. In the entire history of the Predator test, no participant had ever asked to remain longer than the required 72 hours. Admiral Lee activated the communication link. "Cadet Kim, this is Admiral Lee. Please clarify your request." Hyun-woo's voice came through clearly, with no signs of the stress and exhaustion that typically marked survivors of extended time on death worlds. "Admiral, I am requesting permission to remain on Karath Prime for an additional 24 hours to complete my observations of Shadowclaw family dynamics and cooperative hunting behaviors. Cadet, you have successfully completed the test requirements. There is no need to extend your exposure to danger. Admiral, with respect, the danger is minimal at this point. The Shadowclaw and I have established a mutually beneficial relationship. I believe the information I can gather in the next day will be valuable for future military applications." Admiral Lee exchanged glances with the assembled observers. A Brutak representative spoke up. "Admiral, this is unprecedented. The human is requesting to spend voluntary time with the creature that has killed hundreds of our finest warriors. I'm aware of the precedent, Representative. Cadet Kim, what is your current status with the Shadowclaw?" "Admiral, we are currently engaged in cooperative hunting activities. The creature has accepted me as a temporary member of its family unit. Its young have shown no fear or aggression toward me. I believe I have gained insights into Shadowclaw behavior that could revolutionize our understanding of apex predator psychology." The extraction arrived exactly 72 hours after Hyun-woo had been dropped on Karath Prime. The transport crew was prepared for the usual scenarios: extracting a traumatized survivor, recovering a body, or finding no trace at all of the test participant. What they found defied all expectations. Hyun-woo Kim walked calmly to the extraction point, accompanied by the adult Shadowclaw. The massive predator showed no aggression toward the transport crew, but positioned itself protectively near the human while maintaining a watchful alertness. As the extraction team prepared to depart, Hyun-woo turned to the Shadowclaw and made a gesture that the monitoring cameras recorded for analysis by xenobiologists across the galaxy. He placed his hand briefly on the creature's massive head in what could only be interpreted as a farewell between allies. The Shadow Claw responded with a low sound that had never been recorded before. It was not the hunting cry or territorial challenge that previous encounters had documented. It was something entirely new, something that sounded almost like acknowledgement or even gratitude. Back at Nexus Prime Academy, Hyun-Woo's debriefing lasted for 3 days. Representatives from every major species in the Galactic Council came to hear his report on Shadow Claw behavior and the possibility of establishing non-hostile contact with apex predators from Death Worlds. His final recommendation changed everything. The Predator test, as currently designed, measures survival against a superior opponent using traditional military thinking, Hyun-Woo explained to the assembled council. But survival is not always about defeating your enemies. Sometimes survival is about understanding them well enough to coexist. Admiral Bo-Ra Lee stood to address the council. Based on Cadet Kim's successful completion of the test and his unprecedented insights into Shadow Claw behavior, I am recommending immediate revision of our Apex Predator protocols. The test will be restructured to emphasize understanding and cooperation rather than simple survival. The Mindari representative who had initially doubted Hyun-Woo's approach stood up. I formally apologize to the human representative for underestimating both his capabilities and his species' potential. Contributions to galactic military science. The Mindari delegation requests permission to study human tactical thinking for potential integration with our own telepathic strategies. Dong-Hyun Choi, who had been among the casualties of the test, approached Hyun-Woo after the formal proceedings ended. "I was wrong about humans being primitive," he said quietly. "Your approach was not primitive at all. It was more advanced than anything the rest of us could imagine." Hyun-Woo smiled. "Dong-Hyun, every species has something unique to offer. The key is recognizing when conventional wisdom needs to be challenged by unconventional thinking." 6 months later, the reformed Predator test had been attempted by representatives from 12 different species. None had achieved the level of cooperation that Hyun-Woo had established with the Shadow Claw, but several had successfully completed the 72-hour period using modified approaches based on his techniques. Hyun-Woo Kim was promoted to instructor and assigned to develop new training protocols that emphasized adaptability, pattern recognition, and interspecies communication. His first class included cadets from every major species in the Galactic Council, all eager to learn what they had begun calling human-style tactical thinking.